Hello and welcome back. You're now watching the fifth episode of Consult Mansi web series, a series that's dedicated exclusively to the field of communication, which touches upon PR, advertising, marketing, digital media, and journalism. I'm your host, Mansi. I'm a communication specialist, basically a digital marketing consultant and a social media coach. I'm also a guest faculty in a couple of colleges, and I'm a speaker for workshops, seminars, and other events related to communication. Now, before we start this episode, I would like to make it very clear that this is not a paid episode and the content is the IP of Consult Mansi. The content should not be reproduced both for commercial purposes, whether shortly or in full. And also, this episode does not sell any product or services. And the opinions discussed during this course of the episode are purely that of the guest on the show and does not necessarily reflect on Consult Mansi's culture, workings, vision, or mission. Thank you for watching. Let's welcome our guest for today. He is probably the most sought after by every founder or CXO level member in the Indian Silicon Valley. I met him in 2005, 2004, 2005, and he was a journalist who was most welcoming when it came to story pitches. Of course, he didn't do all the stories, but then he always came back. If there was a potential, he always came back with another perspective or probably another angle, something, and he was always welcoming. So that's what has made me seek his time for this episode. He's one of the few well-versed journalists in today's times, well-read, I must say. Please welcome Vishal Krishna, business editor at Your Story. Welcome, Vishal.
Mansi, that's the best introduction somebody's given me. That is really kind of you. Actually, thank you for that kind introduction. And it's always good to see people that I've known from the past come back and reconnect. And it's good to be talking to you today.
I'm so glad you think that way. Thank you so much for that. Okay, so we're going to start off. Okay, so in an era where content creation takes probably 10 times more time than content consumption itself, how are you even keeping up with the demand? I see you doing like 2, 3 stories in a day, and for me, I can't fathom it. I can't fathom it. It requires so much efforts. So how do you do that?
Mansi, that is such a genuine question, and it's a genuine problem to address, right? And especially journalism, content creation has changed a lot. There are many pieces to that question. I worked in a newspaper, that's when we met, and newspapers were happy with 5 stories a week. Back then, I'm talking about 2004, 5, and they wanted people to think individually. They wanted people while you served the structure or the institution. They were happy with you thinking independently. They liked that because that's what made you investigative. They wanted to bring the curiosity out, right? That was how it was. Then I went to the magazine, which is even more it was like a Alice in Wonderland moment, because you can become curious, and you could go on experimenting with ideas, and you have people who would coach you on how to write, how to think, right? And that was what was expected of you. uh, that has changed now. I came into Your Story. Your Story is an amazing place. Don't get me wrong. It's the work that I did in the last, say, 14 years. I've done it in 5 years in Your Story. So that's the amount of work that I've done. And it's exciting because it's very niche. But yes, Your Story itself has changed in many forms over the last 5 years. And to be honest with you, thank you. You're perhaps the only one who brought out that honest statement that we do 3 stories a day. And it's very difficult to keep up because those 3 stories are written stories, right? I'll break them down to you. You have you have video interviews that I do a video show on Instagram every night, 9 to 11 o'clock, right? That's in the evening. And then you have press releases, you have people that you have to interview, right? So that becomes really difficult. The reason I'm able to manage it is because I understand the system. So a lot of the things are easy for me, not just the system of working in a company, but I understand the industry verticals that I write about. I can write from automobile to real estate to energy to anything, right? All I need, because there's information available, you can verify it, you can learn fast, so you can reproduce content. But what it does is it does 2 things, which I'll talk about the negatives first and then get into the pros. Okay, it affects your writing. It While you write fast, it's not good quality. It's really It's really like a popsicle. It's very fast, right? Right. And then, but my video interviews are real quality because they're long form, and it starts with the history of a person and then goes on all the way about the business, right? And it's really breaks it down. But when it comes to writing, you need to take time. It's not like you're talking on video. It requires a lot more emotion to bring it. You need to be good with your words. Perhaps that is missing in the current format. But the current format is built for massive scale. The more stories you put out, the more views you have. It serves a business purpose, but not to take away the fact that you also are connected with daily life, with the entrepreneurs on a day-to-day basis. So you don't really lose touch with them. Unlike the past, where you wrote one story and moved on to the next, right? That doesn't happen anymore. You need to be constantly in touch with your. It's almost like the breaking news kind of stories, like the ones that the other financial journalists do in other big newspapers. But your story is more about understanding their fundraising. What are the VCs thinking? How much are the entrepreneurs going to raise? That's the kind of thing that you're in touch with, and also trying to understand what are the moves they're making. So it's not breaking news, but it's about constant writing about an entrepreneur. But I try to do other things like music. I try to meet entrepreneurs. I just talk to entrepreneurs. I keep in touch with people like you, right? It's very interesting. It keeps me sane. Otherwise, I'm telling you, today's journalists, at least in the mass scale media, really very difficult to keep up. Does that answer your question?
I think so. I think so. I mean, you've given like a lot of things surrounding how, I mean, what it takes to prepare. Okay. And those are like
Yeah.
really tough challenges. See, you've mentioned about funding, you've mentioned about press stories, press releases, and briefings from the government announcement nowadays.
Yes.
And then there are startup founders that you're interviewing and profiling. What genre of these do you enjoy the most?
That's a great question again, because see, I'll tell you what. April, I wrote 70 stories. Even I didn't know I'd written 70 stories. But then I realized all those stories really just add to and they're all tuned into current day journalists have to understand Google keywords and all that, right? I'm not one of those people. I dislike that because I want to keep my I want to express my views, right? So those press releases really don't matter to me. But to answer your question on government releases and all that, I have other people doing it, and even I do them. uh, but I have to be honest with you. It's I would recommend every writer just to focus on what they want to express, and these things, if you know the industry, if you've studied it well, if you've studied the industry well, it's just a 5-minute job. You just have to rewrite it. The press release comes to you, rewrite every sentence. You can't copy verbatim. Although a lot of people do that and they take a byline for it these days, right? But if you can rewrite every sentence quickly and keep the original meaning, then all those press releases are okay to be written about, and you can take a byline. But it's really boring. In those days, you had to work for your byline, right? It's doled out like it's candy for you. It really doesn't matter.
Okay, but which of these do you enjoy? Like, do you
Which of these
like
do I enjoy?
profiling or
Okay, that I'll tell you. To be honest with you, I enjoy stuff that I like doing. I don't like what others tell me. You've answered that question yourself. Not all stories get written, but I write them because I have to in this case, right? The only things that I enjoy are the verticals that I follow are technology, anything in technology, and that too technology not for the sake of saying that it's technical and understanding languages like Golang and things like that. What I enjoy is practically how does it change human life. It's like an Isaac Asimov novel, if you've read one. I mean, if you read the Foundation series, it's not a very technical novel, but it hinges on AI, hinges on consumer behavior, future prediction of the future through using statistics. See, those are the kind of things that I like, and we are taken seriously in the long run, right? I mean, and 5-6 years ago, your story was known as a startup company, just writing about startups, right? But today, all the corporates want to come to your story. They want to say that we want to understand innovation, and your story has those startups, and we can work with you, right? That's what I think is interesting for me. So yeah, so two sides, right? One is your curious stories. You go explore, you experiment. It's your canvas. The second one is you have to help the business because it's a startup. And we'll get into the paid stuff in a bit. I know you have all those questions. So then, you start using, because you built a contact ecosystem, right? You bring them onto the platform for various reasons, for various things, and maintain your credibility of writing, right? So this dual role of mine, from being just a pure play journalist to helping a startup, has been an amazing fusion. But I have a point to add, because you will probably air this to younger people, PR people, and journalists, right? Eventually, as you become senior, Mansi, and you are in the thick of things, and if you are in the thick of things, your contacts will grow, right? There is a line there. Okay, a lot of people come to me and say, monetize your contacts. Monetize. You can monetize the contacts in many ways. I'll speak for the journalists first, and then for the PR people. Okay, so so if you're getting into journalism and you want to keep it clear and not be influenced by others, then it's easy, because you don't want to share your contacts. You're just happy with little that you're earning. You have no complaints. And if you have big dreams, and it's also a power system, right? People want to become editors, mega editors, national editors, international editors, whatever those positions are. That is the same thing as the corporate world. There's no difference there. There's nothing to do with your writing. Just want to set that straight. That's nothing to do with your writing. Maybe a little bit, but your contacts matter. The relationship with the founders or the bosses matter, right? Those things come into play. So, but if you're a creative person and you don't want to get into all this, be happy with earning very little and just forget the rest of it. But if you want to be in the game, you got to play all these things. And that's something that and then outside, people come and ask you, can you give me this contact? Don't share your contacts lightly, you know and don't charge also. I would say that depends on person to person. Be careful. I would suggest that if you want to do that, set up a consultancy, get permission from your company that you can also consult on the side, and then go do something of that sort, right? But don't give away your contacts for free, because they're your hard-earned contacts, right? And now, coming down to the PR people, right? Their objective is to inform people about the company and take it to the media and take it to different stakeholders, like other writers, like blogs, right? Not just blogs, video logs, or whatever. And 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 when they accept to sell something, right? So this is talking to PR people. When they have to objectively tell the founder of the company that this is the scope of things that I'm going to address. Don't overdo it by promising, because then you're going to get into trouble, right? Sometimes you may know a journalist, you may know, but they might not publish it, and that can get you in trouble. That can also burn your relationship with the journalist, because the journalist might also write something which he or she thinks is appropriate, and then you may be in trouble, right? And in many cases, PR is also about spin, right? And that's the job that you do, and you have to spin it. You have to spin it. But yeah, there's no friendship as sort between journalists and PR people. They'll be forever eternal enemies, right? They'll be eternal enemies. But there is meeting ground in between if you look at each other as people. And that's why I've asked journalists and me and PR people to think like business people. It's not personal, it's business.
So much for skewed narratives. Okay. So Vishal, I'm connected with you on Facebook, and I think I saw one of the posts which talked about, I mean, your opinion on misinterpretation of cynicism when it came to the pandemic times. I think you were speaking about the HR who has been telling people to be optimistic. Okay, anything that
Yeah,
you would like to say here on this?
that's it. When day before yesterday, there was a talk about Ratan Tata had a brilliant statement to make. Saying you cannot fire people when there's a pandemic, okay? And he said, how can you do so? You're just passing the buck on, saying that, okay, this is not I can't. And why did you hire them in the first place, right? Yes, it makes business sense, but there needs to be a process. Okay, if you're laying them off, what are you putting them into, right? How are you making sure they all have families? I'll give you examples. There was this person who's in the policy side of a big, there's one of these mobility companies, and she was suddenly asked to leave. Suddenly, just called up and said, you need to pack your bags by next week. Okay, and his wife was expecting in a month. These are emotional things that I throw, but okay, before you ask them to leave, what is it? What is the settlement like? I mean, are you going to give them a 5 month settlement? Help them with other jobs? Those kind of interventions don't exist. People say that yes, it's people just panic, and in the good times they want to. They sell you all kinds of narratives. Say, hey, we are like that, we are like this. Yeah, bad times come, but so we're still normal people. So how do we handle things normally is something that does not exist, and I would recommend that it's never going to happen. Yeah, it's not, at least in my lifetime I've not seen it happen. I have taken people to court over this. I have taken media organizations to court over this, and at least once, and we didn't win because they threw technicality at us. Okay, so when they, for example, I'll not name the company. For example, I worked in an organization for 11 years. The company got sold in the ninth year, and because it got sold in the ninth year, I did not get my gratuity. Okay, and everybody gets gratuity after 5 years, but apparently they throw this act, which is a 1963 Journalists Act or some real bullshit like that. And they say that, oh, if you had to draw gratuity, you have to work in a company for 10 years as a journalist. That was it was a very draconian law, archaic law, and we couldn't fight back because you have to go fight it out in Calcutta or Delhi or Bombay or something like that, right? So what I'm trying to say is humanity is a different thing. If you feel empathy towards that are working with you, but a lot of people can't, and believe me, a lot of us fail at that. That's why being an entrepreneur is very difficult. An entrepreneur who can manage these things is very revered and very few. Okay. But there is a thing or two you can learn. Exuberance is one thing, but you need to also have empathy when things go wrong.
Okay, to move away from all of that and to move to the nicer things, I must say, is your story hiring? Because when I said that I'm going to be talking to you, that's the first thing that a lot of people have asked. If yes, what kind of people are you hiring?
Mostly at the junior level, to be honest. Mostly at the starting writing level. People are looking at CVs because we need good writers coming in, writers who could churn out stuff quickly, like I said, and people who could take press releases, rewrite them, and put them out, and also do the occasional startup story, at least 3 4 startup stories a week. If I mean, for that they need to build a contact base first. But yeah, but at least if they can start writing with press releases and all that, and just generally, you have to also realize a lot of the current day journalists will have to realize when they come in, if there's a global break in a Google blog, have to take that and rewrite it and put it. It's borderline plagiarism, but everybody is doing it, but they rewrite it. Okay, so that's what journalists have to get used to. But that's what I'm saying, you can so get used to sitting on the desk and rewriting these things that you'd forget that there are people out there. So yeah, to answer you, we have frozen hiring in the senior levels, but at the junior levels, it's always open. They can apply, and they're looking for people. Looking for good copy editors or rewriters. They're looking for young journalists who can apply.
Nice to hear this. I mean, I'm pretty sure that the batch who just graduated, the 2020 batch, will be
Hmm.
thrilled to hear this. Now that we've spoken about students who want to get in, what about people who want to get your attention? Businesses,
Startups.
yes, they definitely. And that was another question that they asked. Can you please tell us how do we get his attention to do a story
WhatsApp.
on us?
From the PR perspective, I say WhatsApp me. I just need one line. This is the company. This is a company, and they're solving this. They're not covered in your story, or they were covered in your story 2 3 years ago. But this is how we've grown. So three bullet points. Company name. They are an AI solution, or they could say they are a cloud solution, SaaS or infrastructure as a service, something like that. Achieved X revenues. If they don't want to give revenues, raise so much money. If that is not there, saying have 120 clients, featured about 3 years ago, not in a para but a bullet point form where I can read easily, and that's most of them. I see that and I say this is interesting. And I say I will look into it. One line, then I might not reply for 2 3 days. I'll just say remind me about a question. A lot of people follow up, and then I send questions. And after I send questions, if they answer it quickly, it'll still take 2-3 months to get published.
Definitely. Now, coming to section two, because I think it's time for people to know you better, you as a person. So it's the section is all about you. So let's start with this. Let's start with your family. I mean, if you're comfortable talking about it, because somewhere I have heard in your interviews that you come from a business family and you understand business, and that's what has driven you to be passionate about this. So tell us more about your family.
Yeah, okay. See, for one thing is I never intended to be a journalist. It was an afterthought. Just happened one time in 2003. Just happened. I was never expecting. I didn't want to be a journalist. I knew I could write. Okay, I knew I could write, and not I if left to me, I would have gone and trained like how people train with musicians. I would have wanted to train under an author. That was what I wanted to do originally, but that has not happened. But it's coming back. Probably I want to do that, so I'm going to do that. And yeah, business was the first choice. You know, and with business back at the time, back in the day, I really wanted to do nothing but do sports. And then it was very important back then not to there was this whole stigma around your not many of your cousins and family members are graduates, and you need to at least graduate. There was also a time when many people went away to the US, some family members. So there was this thing that you should have a degree in your hands. So I was very clear, at least, that I play sports. I don't disappoint my parents. I complete a degree, which I did, and it was not a great degree because I did it only because I was playing sports and writing on the side. I've written blogs before blogs. People talked about blogs in three. I was writing them in 96, 90, 95, 96. The early internet, I was already doing reviews. I don't talk about it much because I feel funny. I was transacting on Amazon back in 97, 98. Shipping music from US. It would take me 2 months. I used to have a credit card back then. So I've done the entire thing. What people are doing today probably have done then. And so it's an interesting moment of my life. I was very privy to these things. My mom was very hardworking. She was a banker. And my father was a decent businessman, at least a very flamboyant man at the time when he was young. Flamboyant in terms of persona, not entrepreneurially. But he would move mountains, right? So I would have done I've seen things that many people cannot see. For example, I'd have Sachin Tendulkar come home, things like that. This is 1996, okay, and before the World Cup. So these kind of things would happen, right? And yeah, my family was the larger family was really very powerful. And my dad was in that family in many ways. My dad's family is older than, and whatever. My mom's family is also entrepreneurial. My father's family more so in 100 years. There have been 8 generations of business. I mean, so yeah, and it's been business in agriculture, real estate, film production, granites, and cables, paper, recycling paper and stuff. So it was quite a. It was in my case, at least. I think I've seen two sides of the coin. I've seen the side that is absolutely powerful, and then I've seen a side where dad didn't have much later on in life. So I had to make choices on my own, where I go work with the extended family of uncles, and you start small and things like that. I was not cut out for that because I already had this thing that I'm not going to be. If it was not for my father, it was nobody else kind of thing. So I just went on an exploratory journey of what to do in life. And one of the college professors back then in the University of Leeds said, his name is Kishore Buddha. You can check him out. He's a very interesting lecturer and consultant. He's a semiotics guy, and he's into design thinking. He's a very good guy. He himself had moved to the UK back then, and he suggested that I'll make a recommendation to the Indian Express. And he wrote a letter. I mean, obviously, the first email, Hotmail. And I remember the person who replied, you know him also, but I won't name him here. He called me for an interview, but I realized, but he made me wait for 6 hours in the lobby. So I didn't take the job, thinking that this guy is just a waste of wasting my time, right? So I just flown back from England, and but the funny part is everybody knew who I was when I got in there because of my family, right? And 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 the strange thing is, I then I went back home, figuring out 3 months what to do. So I went and joined one of my uncles, and he had a liquor factory. Worked there for 3 months in on the Nelmangla on the Bombay Highway. It's a huge factory. Worked there for a couple of weeks, not 3 months, couple of weeks. Learned a few things. But then I said I must persist in writing. I was waiting, and then the editor of Indian Express at the time, Shankar, happened to see my mail, and he said, "Would you come in?" And I met him, and I didn't know what journalism was. I was stupid. I was stupid to the T. I didn't know how to bargain a salary. I didn't know anything. I seriously didn't know anything. I just went and said, "I'll work for you." Then the other side was, now as I got bigger, I always thought I'd be bad at contacts. Now everybody calls me and says, "You have great contacts." And I don't know how that happened. And one time I really hated my profession because I didn't have any contacts. But I used to write a lot of stories. That was the interesting part. I used to write a lot of stories, but I didn't know anyone. I would just, the success, my success in the early days for writing, at least the writing part, has a lot to do with all the PR friends that I made. I would just call them and say, "Hey, I have this idea. I want a feature." They were kind enough to set, and interviews happened. I was lucky that way. I was lucky. I It's funny, right? The Vijay Malia thing. How did that happen? I'd met Vijay Malia personally through my family also, but I didn't know him. I didn't use my offices to get to him. Okay. So this time around, as a journalist, I interviewed the MD of USL, Vijay Rekhi. Okay. And how did I get to him? I mean, I think once I interviewed Vijay Rekhi and I was just publishing the story, they suddenly realized that, hey, it'll be better if you get Vijay's quote also. Can you fly down to Delhi? I was lucky in many ways. I've just asked. But I've always made it clear, I'm going to be a person of ideas. I'll probably need good co-founders out there if I ever do a business, and because I'm an ideas man, and I can give my all in terms of, I can convince people, I can sell things, I can conceptualize ideas. But what I cannot do is negotiate over a table and say that if this is over the pricing, that's not me, not yet at least. But that's what you have to learn. I have a wife who's a doctor. She's a surgeon in Kolar, in the RL Jalapa, in the RL Jalapa University. She's a surgeon there, and I have a daughter who's 5 months old. So yeah, things are looking up. They could have never been better. But
Um, Vishal, I want to go back to that 2005 where you were with the Indian Express and you did a lot of stories, like, anything and everything that came to your plate, even though you didn't publish as such or meet them all, but you did stories which is jewelry, product launch, FMCG, and very little bit of business. And today, if I look at you, you're so deep into technology. Why that shift?
and business, technology and business. I see. I realized I wanted to do politics in Indian Express, but a lot of other people were doing it, and I used to do these small things because they realized I can talk English, I can communicate well with people. So they put me in the corporate world, saying, "Okay, write something in corporate world," so that we can say, the thought process for them was they could then go work with that corporate later on, right? And that's the reason I did a lot of those. There was a column that they made me write called career opportunities. If you remember, that was there. And yeah, I did everything, from everything and anything, just because they wanted me to. But meanwhile, I had my own stuff going, which was agriculture at the time, water at the time mostly. And then I had something little bit around telecom, little bit, very little. Then mostly also a little bit of politics, politics of water, politics of uh, garbage collection at the time, all those kind of things. And yeah, I wrote anything and everything, and also about old age homes, disease, pharma, everything, some kind of madness it was. I explored everything in Indian Express. It was interesting. How did I shift? The shift happened because of Indian Express to business world. In business world, I was given the SME beat. The funny part is, there's a funny story to it. I thought I was recruited by Business World, okay, but then these people don't tell me that I was in this is in six, right? They told me I'm going to be in Business World, but I was part of some SME pull out that they were going to put in the magazine. I can go on about that time. I lived in a small room where the roof was leaking, and Bombay monsoons are horrible. Every 2 hours, I had to get up and empty the bucket. Damn, seriously, seriously, I had led that life, and everybody thought I'm going to be some fancy journalist at the time in business world. Really, so that happened, and then funnily enough, the guys who would put on this, and there was a time of journalism went through so much. Everybody hated everybody. Everybody went here and there because money was in this bloody industry. And you know what happened? All my SME stories, the new boss that came out, Jangir Pocha, bless him, he's gone now. He's an amazing man. He and Shrikant Srinivas took over Business World. And those are two amazing people that I have to thank them for whatever I am. Four people from Business World: Rajiv Dubey, Prasenjit, Shrikant, Jangir. Okay, Mansi? They really helped a lot. Okay, they changed my life into whatever I am today. So interestingly, so all my stories that I was researching and writing, they were all stocked. I used to write the occasional one story a month in Business World. Suddenly, Jahangir said, "So, what have you done?" I said, "I've got this about all these small companies." They said, "Yeah, small companies need to be covered," and straight away, I started getting, published. So that's how it started, the business journey. And then from business, I understood zero of technology. I would hate myself. The other day, there's somebody who called me. I'm lucky to have a job now, let me tell you. But I'm okay. I can also start up and go do something because I've got lots of stuff going for me. I can do anything that I wanted. But 7, 8 years ago, when I was not getting salaries on time, when Business World was acquired and all those bad things were happening around my life personally and all that, what happened was not one person stood up and helped me. Not one. Either they wanted me to leave my existing job because they hated the boss, the guy who was, they would say, "Oh, hey, leave, that guy's not good for you," those kind of. I would tell journalists not to listen to this. You focus on your work. Everything else is crap, right? And if you want to go find another job, please do. If you want to stay, please stay. That's the kind of attitude, right? And don't worry about anybody else. And so what happened? Nobody helped. Okay, nobody helped. And when I left and joined your story, they said you made a big mistake. I knew I had not made a mistake because I have to thank Mohandas Pai and his family, Pranav, Siddharth, Nisha, and all of them there, all the ones in 314 Capital, for bringing me here, simply because I realized my true potential of what I could be. I could bring my business legacy back. I could fuse it with my writing, and I could forge my own life, right? But nobody liked it back then.
It's very deep, actually, the struggles and challenges. That's becoming a little serious. So I'm going to move to a little lighter note.
Yes, please,
Um,
please. I'm sorry, I have a habit of making everything,
no, I think
very
that's
serious.
important too. It's today of what people see you is like this very successful journalist in a very successful startup, and that is not the story, right? I mean, today it is like that. Everybody looks at you like
There's a
that. You
reason
should be
for
like
that.
this, yeah. But
There's a
nobody,
reason for that.
yeah, nobody looks at the struggle that for 18 years. It's 18 years is not a short time, right? So I think that is very well
I,
spoken.
I have somebody to thank for this. I'll tell you, my experience would have been nothing if not for Shraddha Sharma. I'll tell you why. See, I mean, I don't meet her that often because she's busy doing her thing and I'm busy doing my thing. The first 2 years we spent time together, she opened up my mind in many ways. It was very important. See, she's the pop star of the startup world today, you know. Uh, but that she was very clear that she needed help from all of us to build this company. But she was very clear with me saying that you're not only good at your work, but you're also very good with people. So can you use your ideas to bring people onto your story? Which I did very well for 5 years. Kind of now it's a set process. There are other people doing it. I can focus on my writing. But there you go. I mean, those 18 years of journalism would have been nothing if not for her. And again, that one line, that one meeting with this big German company, driving in the car, she, after the meeting, she told me that you are good at this. And those things help. So many things like this. And you know, there's a lot of the older journalists like Timaya who works with me. He doesn't get his due. 25 years, immense knowledge. I sometimes feel there are unsung heroes in this country in many ways. I'm nothing. If you look at the people and the thinkers out there, they're doing some phenomenal work. And unfortunately, the only people who are known are on Twitter. There are the ones on Twitter, the ones who are constantly talking are well known. But believe me, once you go deeper, as a whole bunch of people who are as interesting and as powerful in mind. That's what interests me. So that's what I hang around with, these kind of guys. But social media is another animal, Mansi. I don't know how you handle it. I
Right.
seriously think my 18 years of experience doesn't matter in this
Nothing matters.
in this thing, because
Yeah,
I have
yeah.
still people calling me and saying, "Are you the reporter here?" And I say, "Yeah, I'm a reporter." I still say, "Yes, I'm a reporter here." And it's very interesting, right? With all that information, people don't verify, but they also think that, okay. Some people get, yeah, I mean, they're very brash in Hindi. Some of them, "Isse kya milna hai, Shraddha hai na," some shit like that. They say, it's okay. That's okay. I never used to accept it in the beginning, but it's okay. Some people have the right to say that, and it's fine.
Now, coming to the lighter part of it, I know that you're a lot into music, some bit into dancing. I've seen your Facebook
Oh
videos.
my. Oh God. Must have been for the wedding or something like that. Oh God. But dancing is
Okay.
good, you know.
Uh-huh.
Dancing is good. I'm
That
just gonna
one.
change position because my
Yes,
my
please.
phone's my phone's going out of charge. So
Please,
yeah,
please.
so you were saying?
So
Yeah,
you love
dancing,
music,
music more like
dancing,
it.
and playing cricket. Do you miss it? Do you do it more often? Tell us more about it.
About the cricket? Oh yeah, I have to tell you so much about it. There are cricket's also taught me so much. I was an ordinary cricketer, but got to a level which was interesting, right? I would suggest that cricket taught me more about failure. Maybe that's the reason I'm able to match up to whatever comes my way now. So yeah, so cricket taught me about failure. It taught me about teamwork, obviously. It taught me to accept those failures so much, man. I mean, and sometimes there were super cricketers next to me, and being next to them itself was like, when you're with somebody who knows more than you better put your head down, listen, and learn. So that's one thing. But then I've transformed that into my journalism. Maybe that's the reason I've been able to last so long. People say, how have I lasted so long in journalism? And I think there are people who have done it, like Balasubramaniam of ET. He's another great man. Ajay Sukumar and all those guys have outlasted me, in fact. But it'll be good to see long-term journalists. And I think cricket taught me that you got to play for the long run, and it's not short. It's not, it's about improving your techniques. It's your improvement of your fitness. In journalism, it's your mental fitness. But yeah, procrastination has been bad. That can be a killer too, right? You start delaying your plans, and you got to have. But that's where good people, right, they're razor sharp, like those CEOs that I said. They're very razor sharp in what they want, and that's very important. And to do all the things one lifetime is not enough, I think. But I am trying to do everything. Try to be a great musician, great writer. Now as I use the word great, right? Notice how I use it. So I have to get rid of that. That's important. You have to learn everything.
Now that we're talking about skills to be picked up, what I have seen is you pick up a lot of data. Okay, and you quote that data in your interviews, and it's very tough to see. I mean, if you just ask a question, that's very different from quoting data and saying, "Hey, what do you think?" Okay, so it's very tough to dodge that question.
Hmm.
Answers, I mean, people can't mess up with the answers, right? So can you please share a couple of resources from where you actually find these numbers, the data that you get from? Of course, there are certain articles which quote it, that's all over the media or all over the internet, but are there any specific resources that you want to talk about?
See, I mean, if you're part of a company, ask your company to give you an ROC account, Registrar of Companies. That's one form of data. You can always go to Money Control. You get the P&Ls, all the financial data. Then you have the annual reports that you get data from, right? Then you have these analysts that we all know. They have their own research, but they won't share it with you unless you know them very well. They just share general reports with you, just general industry trends. You can inference a lot from that. And then there's a little bit of common sense that you can apply to that. But most importantly, I think the biggest data source would be, you need to know these data firms like Traxon. Your Story has its own data team. You need to have accounts with these, and they're expensive sometimes, to access. I remember writing a Flipkart story in 2015, and we had to pull out data from Singapore, and each of it was $300 for a. So we spent upwards of $1,000 to get few reports. So data sources are difficult to get by, but then go beyond Google. That's what I'm saying. Your contacts will have a lot of data, and that's why you need contacts, and that's why it takes time also.
True, true.
And if you, I mean, if I'm talking like this, the only I mean, you meet anybody from I mean, forget the journalists. I mean, if you meet Mohandas Pai, for example, um, or any engineer or any financial guy, who, but Mohandas Pai is the only guy who can cut across technology, use data across technology, across society, and form his own thoughts. Okay, very difficult. He looks at GDP macro numbers and the micro numbers. So because he's a CFO. So I met brilliant minds like that as well. Those guys are at another level when it comes to data. So training yourself with data is important. Perhaps get yourself a data coach. Is something that I'd recommend journalists. Get somebody to train you in statistics. It's not nowadays. You don't have to. You just need to know the formula and apply that formula and interpret that formula well. And rather than mug the formula. It's not like our days again where you have to mug the formula. All the tools are out there. You just have to know how to apply them and what they mean. And there are tutorials in YouTube. If you want to understand what compounded annual growth rate means, those formulas are already there. And you can do basic statistics of year-on-year growth. You can do yourself. I used to do a lot of that, and that's quantitative, right? But then there's various other equations like calculus and other things, like for example, an understanding discounting cash flow. That's a difficult thing that you have to learn. You need to train. You need to train with people for that. And I recommend, I mean, there are enough people who teach you to do that. I sit with people and ask me to train them for my story specifically. But I'm not using as much data I used to. Let me be honest. I think the most amount of data I would probably use in 16, 17. Now it's only company data, ROC data, simple stat, nothing. It's your story. It's more about individuals rather than data. But the data is also pertaining to that individual and the growth that they have provided. So it's not
Interesting.
something else where you go and figure out what the discounted cash flow of this company is. What does a negative cash flow mean for a retail company? A negative cash flow is actually a good thing for a retail company, which means that they are paying off customers. So these are the kind of things that I notice. It's very interesting.
Of course, data has always been interesting. I mean, there's so many stories that come out just by looking at the data. So, Vishal, I think we've mostly spoken about Vishal, your struggles, and 2 decades, almost 2 decades of you being in this industry. One last and personal question in this section. If Vishal was not a journalist today, what would he be?
I'd be working in my father's factory if that had worked out. If that had worked out, I'd been working as a business person. Probably, I didn't give you this. I know memory just comes back, and maybe if I was working in my father's factory and I had money, I'd probably try to be an actor as well because I had a acting role in Chennai offered in 2004. I went and did a screen test, and I didn't go for it. I just said okay, fine. I just did the photo shoot and with different styles, and probably that's the kind of thing that'll be another life, interesting life.
I have started this Ask M series where I go out and tell people that, okay, this person has agreed to be on my show, or this person
Hmm.
from the industry, and they ask questions.
Hmm.
So I've got like 2 or 3 questions which they have asked, and these are mostly students. So in this section, the first scenario I want to present to you is about a journalist with about 4 years of experience and has
Hmm.
finally got a major break in the career. An awesome story
Mm.
from a leading brand CEO. Okay, and it's a video
Mm.
recording. But while he's filing the story, he gets a call from the Copcom department of that company to cut some part of the story, which is important, which is
Okay.
probably the flow. Okay, what do you do?
You're working for somebody. You cut. Simple as that. And it's not as if it's your. It's not. Then go work for somebody else if you don't like it. That's the main. Seriously. Unless okay, let me give the answer in 2 ways. Okay, you think if you think that particular scene is very important for the CEO, and you think that can drive a harder message, and try to prevail on the person. But if the person is your immediate boss and the person says, no, I think this is it, then you need to then you need to know how to, then you need to find ways to
What
actually
about
include.
what about if the client's corpcom person calls you and says, "I know I've sat through the interview, but
You
then I
can,
think this
okay,
needs to be chopped off."
do two things, edit it two things, saying here's a chopped off version, and here's a version that I have got, which actually I think makes impact. You have both. Why don't you see it once for my sake? Instead of fighting. That's the best way to do it. So that means more hard work, but you want to drive home a point. But why would you do it if it's not for your benefit? So you have to negotiate a benefit. It's a game.
Okay, with that, we come to the next section, which is the rapid fire round.
Okay.
Okay, this is just to know you better. Okay,
Yes,
so
please. I
let's
thought you
start with
already know
this.
so much about me now.
No, from
Go on.
your perspective on the business. Okay.
Go on.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to just give you two options in each of these, and you'll have to pick up
Yes.
one. Okay, and you really need to be quick. So let's start.
Yes.
Okay, Paytm or InMobi?
Paytm.
Okay, Jeffrey Archer or Sydney Sheldon?
Jeffrey Archer. I'll say no. I'd say no to both, but I choose Jeffrey Archer.
Okay.
Because I met him.
Ah, interesting. Okay, Stephen Covey or Stephen Hawking?
Stephen Hawking.
Print journalism or web journalism?
Web.
Okay. Regarding an interview, would you rather interview an AI startup or the largest digital marketing agency?
AI startup, definitely.
Okay. Cricket or music?
Music.
Aha. Okay. Hollywood or Bollywood?
Hollywood, definitely.
Shashi Tharoor or Amitabh Ghosh?
Amitabh Ghosh.
Elon Musk or Sundar Pichai?
Musk.
Aha. Tata or Ambani?
Tata's.
Aha. Nice. I think that was very fast and that was very quick. Thank you so much for that. I mean, I haven't seen rapid fires so nicely with the interviews, so I'm glad you answered it like really fast. With that, we come to the end of this episode. Thank you so much, Vishal. I think that was plenty of time where we have discussed about you in person, about your struggles, about how the industry has moved, and you've given some really good suggestions for people who want to get into this industry, who want to survive into this industry. And that's been a fantastic conversation. It's like, old time's sake, let's just sit and talk. So this is a beautiful conversation.
Mansi, I enjoyed this because perhaps you saw me in the early part, right? There's no lying to it, right? So that's what makes this conversation interesting. The fact that we've known each other for 15 years, although we were not in touch for 15 years. Believe me, guys, if you're watching this, she just messaged me and I said yes to her because she's an old associate and friend. And sometimes I think your relationships matter. So once you know somebody, it should last for a long time, and that's important.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Vishal. No, I think that's what makes you journalist different from others, where you really care and you put in that efforts to have that relationships in place, keep in touch with people and build that networking. So I think that's what has contributed to the success of what you are, not just from a career point of view, more from a person point of view. You're an amazing person to work with. Okay.
Thank you, man.
Okay, so for those of you who are watching, thank you so much for watching this episode. I'm sure you have an opinion on the conversation that we have had. So all you need to do is just leave your opinions and questions, if any, in the comment section below, and I will take it forward. I promise you I'll get an answer from Vishal as well.
Yeah, we'll answer it for sure.
If you want to get in touch with me, I'm available on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Gmail as Consult Mansi. That's CONSULTMANASI. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see your opinions soon in my inbox. Once again, thanks, Vishal. Thanks for your patience.
Mansi, you're amazing. You should have been a journalist.